disagreement between the federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities (ASUU) has taken a different twist. For over 7 months, Nigerian undergraduates have been off campus over the parties not reaching a conclusive agreement. That's our focus this week on Special Report. I'm Olumide Makoli. On February 14th, the National Executive Council of the Academic Staff Union of Universities (ASUU) announced a 1-month warning strike.
Considering the government has failed to fully implement the memorandum of action signed with the Academic Staff Union of University on 23 December 2013, given that the draft report of the negotiation agreement had been submitted for finalization for more than 9 weeks, more than 9 works now, and noting that the forceful payment of ASUU member salary and emolument with integrated payroll and personnel management information system IPs, and non-adoption of the University Transparency and Academic Solution have continued to shortchange our members. NEC therefore resolved to embark on a 4-week rollover total and comprehensive strike beginning from Monday, 14 February 2020.
It was not surprising to many who've come to terms with what appears to be the most formidable tool available for the union to express its displeasure with its employer, the federal government, when it's aggrieved.
All the issues have been addressed. The last thing that happened was the committee that looked at their demands, the renegotiation that is going on, and they submitted a draft agreement which the ministry is looking at. The committee is looking at it. Immediately it finishes, the government will announce what it has accepted of that. Then suddenly I had them going on strike. Still, I think we should ask them, because the federal government is ready to meet them on all the issues they have raised. And if there are so many meetings and then the gap is not closing, I think it's not the fault of government. The negotiation that has been going on is the solution. And that is why I told you I'm so surprised that ASUU has gone on strike.
On the expiration of the 4-week warning strike, it was extended by 2 months against expectations of a full-scale indefinite strike. Academic activities have been grounded. Unusual quietness takes center stage in campuses since the strike was activated in its chapters across universities in Nigeria. ASUU says its decision to down tools was prompted by the failure of the federal government to fully implement the renegotiated 2009 agreement and the memorandum of action it signed with the union in 2020.
And after a protracted struggle, 2014, the president said, let me meet with you and resolve this problem today, even if it lasts for 10 days. So we met with him and met for 14 hours. And we came to a conclusion that government said you cannot pay 1.3 trillion as a goal. Let's spread it over 6 years. That first year give 200 billion, and the next 5 years give 220 billion. And we signed an agreement. They managed to release that first one. And when you go around any Nigerian university today, look at the structure. There is no way you will not see need assessment fund from that 200 billion. Laboratories, you see need assessment fund. But that was the end. This government came in 7 years ago. We said 220 billion per year. But from when they came in 2015 and today, they have only released 50 billion. 50. They have only released 50 billion. So that is the height of the crisis that we have today.
To government, ASUU's decision to prolong the strike action is unwarranted.
It will be resolved, and very soon. We are interested in our children going back to school. And if ASUU and other unions in the university system want to comply with the labor laws of the country, the land, once I have apprehended a dispute and brought it to my table, you return to what is called status quo ante bellum. You go back from war and start teaching your students while this is work in progress. So even as they have abandoned their jobs, all of them, and the children are at home, discussions and work is still going on. It's work in progress. So they should have stayed back to work while we are doing all this. So this is the situation with the ASUU and other union palaver. We are not giving any preferential treatment to anybody. If government decide to up, which they will do, which government is ready to do, if we decide to raise, their packages. It will be holistically done for all the university unions because they're all in the same environment. And we know also that once you do it in the universities, the polytechnics will come. We also know that the colleges of education will come. They're all educational sector. And once you finish with the educational sector, we also know that the health system will come. So it's complex, like he said.
The Minister of Education and his counterpart at the Ministry of Labour and Employment have been leading negotiations with the striking university lecturers since they embarked on the latest strike in February, but none of those meetings have been able to solve the impasse. As part of seeking solutions to the crisis, the federal government dragged members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities (ASUU) before Justice Polycarp Hammond of National Industrial Court to seek redress over the lingering strike by the lecturers. Counsel to ASUU, Femi Falana, argues that the matter was adjourned for further mention and not for hearing. He says he's been served with the federal government's interlocutory injunction. He adds that ASUU is currently meeting with stakeholders to ensure that the lingering crisis is resolved.
We have no business coming here because the matter ought to have been resolved by now. And the government has just set up another committee of 14 members. That was done last week. So we're expecting their report. When we're just suddenly told that the government had rushed to the court. I hope it's not a reaction to the suit by Serap. What the law envisaged was that if you didn't work, you shouldn't be paid. But if I'm saying I am going to work, you know in the past, when ASUU declared a strike, the members always covered lost ground, and they're going to do so this time. So there shouldn't be any blackmail here. Because when the government says there's no money, but you know there's money in the country. But it's a question of priority. Has the government given attention to education? And we must run a country where agreements are observed by governments under the rule of law. Because once the government has signed an agreement with ASUU and is registered in the Ministry of Labour, it's binding on the government. But the government has a way of violating its own commitment all the time. And that is why you have these strikes.
The action of the federal government is totally condemnable in trying to abandon the negotiations that commenced already and not allowing that process to go through. We had filed an action on the 8th of September before this same National Industrial Court, asking the court to compel the government to respect and enforce the agreements that is pending and binding on the parties, because we're not giving a good impression to the entire world. If you willingly enter into agreements and then for one reason or the other, one party to that agreement is not willing to abide by it and is trying to use force, and that's why it's important that we believe that the court will intervene to ensure that that agreement remains enforceable. And then once that is done, we can then talk about how lecturers can go back to the universities and then the schools will open, because the state of the universities presently is totally decrepit. I am working with a lot of alumni in my own former university, building hostels, doing a lot of things to ensure that the welfare of students and lecturers is something that can be proud of. So we can't allow a system whereby government abandons its own responsibilities, and then the money that is supposed to be used for infrastructure and the education of our children are being embezzled. How much is ASUU asking for? What does it take to build the universities? So we believe that those of us who went through those universities, it was because of the commitment of government that we were able to attend those schools and we came out.
Delivering a ruling on the interlocutory injunction filed by the federal government, Justice Polycarp Hammond restrained ASUU from continuing with the industrial action pending the determination of the suit.
The ruling by the Honorable Court is very consistent with rule of law. It's also a recognition of the fundamental role that education play in development, in national development, in economic development, and also it recognizes the fact that without education, there will be no rule of law. I thank the judiciary for saving educational development. What has happened is that the past 7 months, educational development has been halted, particularly in public universities in Nigeria, which ought not to be. Because when that fundamental pillar on which development rests is halted for 7 months, it means the entire economic, the entire social development is also halted, which ought not to be. So what the court did was to agree with us that an interlocutory injunction has to be granted against the Academic Staff Union of Universities, their agents, privies, or whatever name they are described, from continuing with the strike pending the hearing and determination of the substantive suit. That's in accordance with rule of law. And then we are happy because we really have to do something to ensure that the bedrock of development in Nigeria, education, is not destroyed.
ASUU President Professor Sodeke, who was on our program Politics Today, believes that the court should have also asked the federal government to consider meeting the demands of the lecturers.
We need to understand that they are going to meet the president to present to him, and if they agree, the strike is called off. If all these are going on to resolve the problem amicably in the interest of the system, and the Minister of Labour decided to go to court, you had a meeting with the president on Friday last week. We have a meeting with the Senate this week, the two major arms of the government, and they said we are handling the issue, we will resolve it within a very short time. And a member of that executive goes to court. But we were surprised when we went to the court, the judgment was given in favor of federal government. Who said it didn't go to court? That tells you the type of thing you have as a country. A minister went to who went to the court? Because when we went to the court, the person is the Minister of Labour that took the case to court. Why the executive arm and legislative arm of the government are resolving the issues? The higher decision-making person in this country is the president of the country. And the president told the whole country, I have listened to you. I will consult and come back to you. The president of the country. We went to the legislative arm and we finished, and they said, yes, we have reached some understanding. Give us 1 week to meet with the president when he comes back from a trip he went abroad, and we'll resolve this problem. While we are doing this, somebody wants to call to say, you must force them back to school. You see, let me tell you the catastrophe of what has just happened today. It's a catastrophe. The last time this happened was during the military era. You know the catastrophe? I can assure you when this strike is over, a large number of our lecturers are going to migrate from this country.
Also reacting to the judgment, Minister of Labour and Employment Chris Ngige advises the Academic Staff Union of Universities to obey the National Industrial Court ruling and call off its ongoing nationwide strike while negotiations continue.
Once there is a court judgment or ruling or order, you must first obey, and then you can apply for an appeal if you so desire, or apply for a stay if you so desire. Say that's a stay of execution. So the maxim in law, jurisprudence, and everything about the law is that you obey a court's ruling, judgment, or order, no matter how bad. The qualifying thing is that no matter how bad, and no matter how you disagree with it, you first obey. Like the military people say, obey before complain. So we expect them to get back to the classroom. But that doesn't foreclose negotiations. The negotiations will be on. As a matter of fact, it will be on official and unofficially.
Court orders and fiat instructions or directives do not solve a crisis. What you need to do is to settle down and dialogue more. And I believe ASUU is prepared to concede in more. Federal government is also, Mr. President did say he is going to consult more and get back to the Committee of Pro-Chancellors. And I believe if that is done, we'll be able to resolve the crisis rather than just giving a fiat order. We are in a democracy. We are not under military dictatorship, please.
He further advised that after obedience, ASUU can then apply for an appeal if they so desire or apply for a stay of execution.
Distinguished senators and honorable members, it is instructive to know that today government alone cannot provide the resources required for funding tertiary education.
On his part, President Muhammadu Buhari appeals to the leadership of ASUU to show greater understanding in the government's willingness to resolve the ongoing face-off in the interest of the nation and the future of Nigerians. Speaking after presenting the 2023 budget before the National Assembly, he says government is concerned about the welfare of lecturers and has allocated 470 billion naira in the 2023 budget for the revitalization and salary enhancement of tertiary schools in Nigeria.
In the determined effort to resolve the issue, we have provided a total of 470 billion naira in the 2023 budget from our constrained resources for revitalization and salary enhancements in the tertiary institutions. Distinguished senators and honorable members, it is instructive to note that today government alone cannot provide the resources required for funding tertiary education. In most countries, the cost of education is jointly shared between the government and the people, especially at the tertiary level. It is imperative, therefore, that we introduce a more sustainable model of funding tertiary education. The government remains committed to the implementation of agreements reached with staff union within available resources. This is why we have remained resolute that we will not sign any agreement that we would be unable to implement. Individual institutions would be encouraged to keep faith with any government reached in due course to ensure stability in the educational sector.
In ASUU's words, as a law-abiding union and in deference to appeals by the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, and in recognition of the efforts of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Femi Gbadabiamila.
From what we have seen today, I think for the first time since this our action started, we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel, because this is the first time we are having such thing that, and we hope this time around, there will not be any attempt by any party or group to create something that will also make us run into anything again. We hope that this will be the final in the interest of our children. Our struggle, and I thank God the National Assembly are joining us, is for the educational system in Nigeria. We want to have a university in Nigeria where we should be earning money from students from all over the world and paying in hard currency as we are paying, so that the system will grow. That's why we're in this struggle.
It's basically what we have agreed with ASUU now is basically to put everything on paper, sign off, and I believe if we had met yesterday, ASUU and the papers have been drawn up, ASUU I'm sure would have called off the strike today. But we only just met behind closed doors now, and so we have to draw up the agreements as I have stated to you, and hopefully next couple of days, once of course ASUU has to get back to its base as well. Once that is agreed, I'm very hopeful and very excited about I wouldn't call it possibility or probability that the strike will be called off in a matter of days.
In Lagos and Osun State, academic activities are yet to resume. However, a few students were found on campus.
We're waiting on the update of the resumption. Hopefully we get to hear anything from the Senate and resume school in a short while.
As anticipated, some union leaders speak on the months of struggle.
Now, apart from the teaching staff unions, all others have called off their strike. The SANU, the NASU, the NATS, and all others have called off their strike. So all other members of staff are on their duty post working. You've seen it yourself the way they are doing their jobs when you went around the campus. So what we're expecting now is that the ASUU members to call off the strike will call our students back to school and academic activities will continue.
I understand that ASUU is fighting for, the betterment of the school system in the country, which is in a terrible state. But they should put the students first, in their decision making, because eventually, if you think about it, it's still the student that is going to be delayed, it's still the student that is going to suffer everything, and they should try and work something out, because time really is a very precious, it's very precious.
In the University of Ibadan, Oyo State, students are seen within the premises of the institution as classrooms remain deserted, as some students are optimistic of full resumption on Monday.
Yeah, our major statement is they should not only call upon ASUU during strike. They should call upon ASUU every time so that they can see a way forward in revitalizing Nigerian educational system.
Whatever the agreement the federal government has reached with ASUU, they make sure that they fulfill that agreement in due course, in due time, so that we will not have occurrence of this perpetual ASUU strike again. So I will appeal to the ASUU National Executive to find means and other ways, because they taught us in class, our professor and lecturer, that when you are using the same method for a particular situation, you cannot get a different result. You continue to get the same result.
In the eastern region of Nigeria, the Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka, comes alive with the presence of students and lecturers. For many, the focus is to cover up for lost time, as both students and lecturers will be on a tight schedule.
How long can we continue like this? It has happened in many ways. It has happened so many years. Every government that comes to power must be greeted with ASUU strike. Why can't there be a peaceful resolution once and for all to the main roots of this strike? So I think the government in power should do everything necessary to stop or to put an end to ASUU strike once and for all. In fact, let this be the last. Let it never happen again. Take, for instance, some students that were meant to graduate. By now, some students are supposed to be a graduate, but a whole academic year is being wasted because of strike, because of loggerheads.
Although the university system has some housekeeping duties to address, the union's agitations are not about grandstanding, but for the good of the system.
It's rather a shame of a nation that we allowed our universities to be shut for 8 months. What was ASUU asking for? Revitalization of the universities owned by the federal government and the state government. Submission of the reports of the visitation panel to the universities owned by the federal government. Removal of IPPIS that has been globally notoriously registered as being fraudulent and corruption-ridden. Revitalization of the university. Payment of earned allowances, not just allowances, they have been earned, some as far back as 2005 or 2009. And then finally, human resources must be encouraged so that there will be motivation within the system. If these are all the issues on ground for ASUU, today the struggle went and we are where we are. I don't think I feel 100% fulfilled, because what we got could have been much more. 1, 2, we didn't need 8 months of time wasting of the intellectual box of the nation, of the world, to arrive at this. We also don't need to starve our lecturers and their families, including their aged parents, to arrive at this.
For me, I'm not in the academic world, but my conclusion is nothing has been gained in 8 months. Nothing has been gained. ASUU had an 8-point demand from inception. These are not demands that started 8 months ago. I think I read somewhere that in about 23 years, there have been 16 strike actions at the instance of ASUU in respect of the same heads of claim. And now, what was the reason given
by the leadership of ASUU for calling off the strike. It says, well, due to the intervention of particularly the head of the lower house of assembly, Mr. Agbajabiamila, the intervention of notable Nigerians, the appeal of the respected Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we're calling off this strike. We have not achieved most of the things we asked for. But because of the intervention, we'll call it off, hoping that the demands will be met. Now, we're in election season. We have this penchant for sweeping under the carpet our big problems until the elections are over to be inherited by the incoming government. And that is what we have done again.
Because we are obeying an industrial court judgment. That's why we are resuming. But the issue has not been fully resolved. More agreements signed. So we are resuming because we are a law-abiding organization, and we don't want to break the law. That is the major reason why we are also hoping that the intervention of the Speaker, as promised by him, will resolve this problem within a very short time. So the issue has not been fully resolved, but will resume because of that court injunction.
As students get set for classes to begin across the country, leadership of the union and federal government representatives need to devise better means of resolving their differences than keeping the students away from classes.
We really hope that the issues are quickly resolved so that the students can indeed return to school. And that's our package for today. Do join us again next time. I'm Olumide Macaulay.